Why is there a concern about the unemployment rate dropping in America? We got a final jobs report for 2020, looking back on the month of November, and this really tells an interesting story. And since we all share in the economy, I thought we'd just take a few moments to go over the key points of this report. So when we look at a jobs report, we get a jobs report, by the way, the first Friday of every month, looking back on the previous month. So we're getting a snapshot of the past. What we're looking at when we're looking at this data is expectations and trends. And so here's what you should know about this report. There was job creation in America in November. We did see jobs added to the economy, but there were fewer jobs added than economists expected or were hoping for. And the trend line overall when it comes to job creation in the country has slowed. And this is raising some concerns for economists, politicians, business leaders alike. So where was there actual job growth? In a few key categories, including warehousing and transportation, which brings to mind Amazon shopping, right? Where the American consumer is still active, we're seeing job growth. Where are we seeing job declines? In retail. This is an area we usually see job growth because retailers add seasonal employees, but they're not doing that this year, at least from what we are seeing in this report. So the trend line overall is what is concerning to economists. To some economists, not all equally, but remember at the beginning of the year when there was a federal shutdown of the US economy, we lost more than 20 million jobs. So that went straight up the job losses. And since that time, we've come down on the other side of that steep slope. But we started to come down quickly, and now we're slowing. And the longer it takes for jobs to come back to the economy, the longer the economic recovery is. So we're still missing about 10 million jobs that we lost in the spring that we haven't gotten back yet. But the real concern in this report has to do with the labor force overall. So to be counted in this data, you have to qualify in a few different ways. You have to be able to work, wanting to work, and actively looking for a job. If you want to work but you're not actively looking for a job, you're actually not counted as part of the labor force, and this impacts the unemployment rate, which is a headline that everyone looks at. So I want to show you how this actually works. So to do that, let's look at the whiteboard. So let's use some really simple numbers. This is Smarter News Village. We have a labor force of 100 people. We have 10 people who really want a job, actively looking for work, and so our unemployment rate is 10%. Then the pandemic hits, and we have a number of people that leave the labor force for any number of reasons, family situations, they're high risk. Let's say 10 people end up leaving the labor force, not necessarily because they want to, but they're not actively looking for work. So they're suddenly not counted as part of the labor force. So our labor force shrinks to 90. We have a couple people that got jobs. Let's say 2 people got jobs. So 8 people are unemployed. And so now our unemployment rate drops to about 8.8%, which on the surface looks much better, doesn't it, than 10%. But we know if we dig into the numbers, we have these 10 people sitting on the sidelines now that weren't when the unemployment rate was higher. And so we're seeing this play out in our data as well. In October, the unemployment rate in America was 6.9%. In November, it's 6.7%. One of the reasons for this is job creation, but another reason for this is a shrinking labor force participation. So according to the latest report, the Labor Department says there's about 7 million Americans who are not counted as unemployed because they weren't actively looking for work during the last 4 weeks. That's 2 million more Americans in the spring. So that number has really grown. And we know based on data that this is really disproportionately impacting women. Either women had to make a certain choice based on their family situation, or they're in industries that were more impacted by the pandemic. And this is something that I really relate to. I understand what it's like to choose to leave a job when, if circumstances were different, you may not have made that choice. And I know what it's like to lose that purpose and also that earning power, which really impacts American families. This is one of the reasons why this jobs report is adding a little bit of fire to potentially another round of COVID-19 stimulus. At the beginning of the week, lawmakers were talking about maybe getting a little closer together before the holidays to get a stimulus package passed. And even just after this jobs report, we're seeing some more murmurs that could happen. So just something to keep in mind in case you see that headline. So a lot to go through here, and certainly a lot more to come. The first week of January, the first Friday of January, we will get our jobs report for December, and then we'll have the complete year of data for 2020 really to comb through, and we'll have a lot to talk about then. questions and comments, let me know. And as always, more on smarternews.com.